My name is Roger Hughes. I've been asked to share a few thoughts about this upcoming referendum. The first observation I'd like to make is that a referendum, in my understanding, is to get the will of the people. So why is the government spending millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money to push their side of an argument? This undermines the very spirit and purpose of a referendum. Many Aboriginal folks have already pointed out that we don't need an additional voice. They already have a voice in Parliament. We have senators and MPs who are Aboriginal already in government, who are more than capable of speaking about the needs of Aboriginal people. We often hear a song on the ABC saying we are one and we speak with one voice. That being the case, why are they seeking another voice? Another voice is not needed. If we are to be one people under one flag, that gets away from the idea of apartheid and segregation. Indeed, Australia had sanctions against South Africa to make them drop apartheid, and yet we are strengthening the apartheid system in Australia by delivering services to people on the basis of race or colour rather than on the basis of their need. I know a chap that was self-employed and sometimes had to get back on Centrelink payments, and he had great difficulty. And one day when he was filling out an application form where it said, "Are you of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander?" he wrote yes, and he had no trouble from that moment on. This affirmative action can have a short-term benefit for a few, but conditions most to believe that they are inferior in some way and need special help. Well, I've met plenty of Aboriginal people who don't need any special help. They work hard, behave themselves well, and earn the respect of everybody that knows them. When I met my first wife in Alice Springs, she was working as a missionary in a missionary children's home in Alice Springs, and she herself was of Aboriginal descent, and they were looking after people who were either unwanted by their parents or were subject to some kind of neglect and abuse. But of course they're now all classified as stolen. Well, this stolen generation thing is one of the great lies that has been told. Undoubtedly some people were taken that should not have been, but many who were taken for their own health and safety now claim that they are stolen. Some of the ones that went into government and church homes were not looked after well, and abuse quite often continued. But many Aboriginal people have closed the gap themselves by not dwelling on the past or on the negative things that happened to them, but they've had an attitude which says that they would get on with their own lives. The other day I was watching Jacinta Price at the National Press Club speech, and I observed this courageous woman who dares to speak the truth, even if it makes her unpopular with many. She is indeed a beautiful and courageous person, and I couldn't help but compare her to some of the harridans of hate from the other camp, and she came off that comparison very well indeed. We hear terms like intergenerational trauma, that people suffer because of things that have happened in past history. Well, my understanding is that Australia suffered an invasion, if you want to call it that, a couple of 100 years ago. You know, if you go back to England between 400 and 500 AD, the Angles, the Jutes and the Saxons attacked Britain. And then there was the Romans, the Vikings, the Normans. It went on for hundreds and hundreds of years, where they were slaughtered and murdered, despoiled of all that they had. Are they clamouring for land rights or worrying about what happened in history? No, they're getting on with their lives, and that's what we all need to do. We can't help the things that happen to us in life, but we can help our attitude to those things and what we do about it. When I first met my wife and I met her family, when we came back to Deniliquin in New South Wales, I discovered that her parents didn't have drink in the home, that her father had worked most of his life, that she had one brother in particular who was a great solid citizen, a really decent chap, the sort of man that I would aspire to be and look up to. And yet he had brothers who made different choices in life and turned to the bottle. You know, the people in the psych industry would tell us that we are a product of our genetic and environmental inheritance. There is a fair bit of truth in that, but they leave out of the equation a most important factor. That is that you have a free will. And I have met many Aboriginal people, fine people all over Australia, who do very well because of their own attitude to life. It seems that some people almost need to have some trauma in their past, whether real or manufactured, in order to excuse their own personal failures in life and lack of courage to face the challenges of life. Often people seek an escape. Maybe it's through alcohol or drugs or whatever. These things have sometimes been called the narcotic suspension of reality. Well, reality can be hard. Those who would contend that Australia had some kind of a utopian paradise before European settlement are not being honest about the fact. I hear some folks talking about their own culture, and yet, having travelled and lived in the Northern Territory, I lived in Alice Springs for about 6 months and have travelled from the Kimberleys to Cape York. I haven't found many Aboriginal people that want to live within the parameters of their culture. It's something they talk about. The reality is they wish to enjoy the benefits of modern civilization and all that other people have, and good on them. But don't dwell on the past. Look for the future. You can have some control over your life. I think again of some of the Aboriginal people that have spoken on this subject. A lady from Darwin the other day was asked, what about incarceration of Aboriginal people? And she said, if you do the crime, you can do the time. She was honest enough to admit that people are not incarcerated in prison purely because of their race or colour, but because of their behaviour. I have met many beautiful Aboriginal people who are better people than what I am, and solid citizens, and they have done it through a force of their own will because they decided to. A card player was once asked, and he was very successful, why was he successful? Did he happen to be dealt a good hand? And was he lucky? And he said, no, success in cards is the same as success in life. It's being able to play a poor hand well. And that's how life is. No, it's not easy, it's hard. My advice is, don't hide behind things that have happened in history or any disadvantage that you perceive you have. Get on with life. Thank you for your time.